The crystal champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of the penthouse suite, sending shards skittering across the room like scattered diamonds. Mama Adeyemi stood frozen in her worn cleaning uniform, her weathered hands still gripping the mop handle, as the young woman in designer heels screamed at her with a fury that made the air crackle. "You stupid old woman! Do you know how much these shoes cost? More than you make in a year scrubbing toilets." But Mama Adeyemi wasn't looking at the champagne soaking into the Persian rug. Her eyes were fixed on the stack of stolen jewelry boxes barely hidden behind the sofa, pieces she recognized from her own private collection at home. This woman, Chioma Okafor, the celebrated mother everyone thought was perfect for her son, was a thief. And she had no idea that the cleaning lady she was abusing was actually Adana Adeyemi, one of the wealthiest women in Lagos, worth over 3 billion naira. 6 months earlier, Mama Adeyemi had been sitting in her sprawling estate in Ikoyi, surrounded by luxury but drowning in worry. Her only son, Kwame, was 32 years old and still unmarried. But it wasn't the lack of a wife that troubled her. It was the parade of women who came and went through his life, each one more polished and hollow than the last. Women who saw naira signs instead of the gentle, brilliant man she had raised. Women who called her Mama to her face while plotting how quickly they could ship her off to some distant property once the wedding was done. She had overheard the last one, Zara, on the phone in the garden. "Don't worry, girl. Once I get that ring, the old woman goes to the village house. I didn't sign up to play nursemaid to someone's mother." That night, Mama Adeyemi made a decision that would change everything. She would disappear from her life of privilege and do something nobody would expect. She would become invisible. She would become a cleaner. Her lawyer, Mr. Okonkwo, had thought she'd lost her mind. "Madam, this is dangerous. What if someone recognizes you?" But Mama Adeyemi had smiled, a plan already forming in her sharp mind. "Who looks at the face of a cleaner, Okonkwo? We are the invisible people. We clean their messes, hear their secrets, and they never see us at all." She enrolled with Elite Cleaners, an agency that serviced the wealthiest homes and offices in Lagos. She wore a grey wig, padding to change her figure, and thick glasses that obscured her features. She bent her shoulders and shuffled her feet. She became Mama Ngozi, a widow from Enugu who needed work to send money back to her grandchildren. For 3 months, she scrubbed floors in the homes of Nigeria's elite. She cleaned toilets for oil magnates and dusted shelves for tech billionaires. And she watched. She listened. She learned who people really were when they thought no one important was watching. She saw wives who barely spoke to their husbands. She saw children who treated their parents like ATM machines. But she also saw moments of genuine kindness. A young woman who always asked about her day. A family that insisted she eat lunch with them. A man who helped her carry heavy buckets without being asked. Then Kwame announced he was serious about someone. Chioma Okafor. A successful model with her own fashion line. Beautiful, educated, charming. Everyone approved. Magazine covers were already being negotiated. His business partners called him lucky. His friends envied him. Mama Adeyemi called Elite Cleaners and requested assignment to Chioma's penthouse apartment in Victoria Island. "I hear Miss Okafor is a wonderful person," she told the dispatcher. "I would be honored to work in her home." The first week, Chioma barely acknowledged her presence. The second week, Mama Adeyemi watched as Chioma screamed at a delivery driver for being 5 minutes late. The third week, she saw how Chioma spoke on the phone about Kwame. "The man is loaded, but so boring. Always talking about his charity work and helping people. I just need him to put a ring on it so I can access those accounts." But it was the fourth week, today, when everything came crashing down literally. Mama Adeyemi had been cleaning the bedroom when she noticed the jewelry boxes. Her jewelry boxes. Pieces Kwame had borrowed from her personal collection to surprise Chioma with, pieces worth millions of naira. Pieces that were supposed to be gifts but were clearly about to be sold, based on the appraiser's card sitting right next to them. She had stumbled backward in shock, knocking over Chioma's champagne glass. Now, as Chioma's tirade continued, as this woman who wanted to marry her son called her worthless and stupid, Mama Adeyemi made a choice. She slowly straightened her bent back. She removed her thick glasses. She pulled off the grey wig, letting her own elegantly styled hair fall free. She stood to her full height, and for the first time in 4 weeks, she looked Chioma directly in the eye. The change in the room was instant. Chioma's mouth fell open. The color drained from her face. She stumbled backward, her expensive heels finally finding those champagne-soaked patches she'd been so angry about. "You," Chioma whispered, her voice strangled. You're. Adana Adeyemi," Mama said quietly, her voice no longer the humble shuffle of Mama Ngozi. "Kwame's mother. And I believe you have something that belongs to me." What happened next would depend entirely on what Chioma chose to do. But Mama Adeyemi was ready for anything. Because in the next room, hidden behind a decorative screen, stood 2 people Chioma didn't know were there. 2 people who had heard everything. Kwame himself, and Police Commissioner Akinwande, an old family friend. The trap had been set. And it had just snapped shut. 24 hours before the confrontation, Mama Adeyemi had been sitting in a small cafe in Yoba, wearing her Mama Ngozi disguise, reviewing evidence she'd been gathering for weeks. Spread across her phone screen were photos, recordings, and documents that painted a disturbing picture of the woman her son planned to marry. But gathering evidence as a cleaning lady was one thing. Getting Kwame to believe it was something else entirely. She knew her son. He was brilliant with business but stubborn when it came to matters of the heart. He would think she was being an overprotective mother, unable to let him grow up. He would defend Chioma. He might even grow angry with her for interfering. No, she couldn't just tell him. He needed to see for himself. That's when she had called Commissioner Akinwande. They had known each other for 30 years, since before she had money, when she was just Ada from the market who dreamed of building something bigger. He owed her his career, his education, his position. She had funded his path through university when no one else believed in him. "Ada, what you're asking is irregular," he had said over their secure phone line. "What's irregular is a thief preparing to marry into my family, Commissioner. I need you there as a witness. I need official presence when this goes down. She's not just stealing jewelry. Look at these bank transfers I found on her laptop." The documents showed something far worse than simple theft. Chioma was part of a sophisticated fraud ring targeting wealthy Nigerian men. She would date them, gain their trust, steal valuable items, and disappear before suspicion could form. But with Kwame, she had gotten greedy. Marriage meant access to everything. The full fortune. The properties. The business accounts. "How did you get into her laptop?" the commissioner had asked. Mama Adeyemi had smiled. "People forget their cleaning ladies can read, Commissioner. They leave everything open. Passwords written on sticky notes. Conversations happening right in front of us. We are furniture to them. Convenient furniture that scrubs and dust." "And Kwame? Does he know you've been masquerading as a cleaner?" "No. And that's how it needs to stay until tomorrow. Can you be in place?" The commissioner had agreed. But there was one more person who needed to be there. Kwame himself. Getting him to Chioma's apartment without warning her had required careful planning. Mama Adeyemi had used a burner phone to send Chioma a fake message from her business partner, requesting an urgent meeting across town. The kind of meeting Chioma couldn't refuse because it promised a significant payout. The appointment was scheduled for exactly when Mama Adeyemi would be cleaning. Then she had called Kwame from her real phone, using her real voice. "My son, I need you to do something for me. Don't ask questions. Go to Chioma's apartment tomorrow at 2 p.m. Use the spare key she gave you. Go quietly. There's something you need to see. Mama, what is this about? Are you spying on my girlfriend? Kwame Emmanuel Adeyemi, I have never steered you wrong. I am asking you to trust me now. Just this once. If I'm wrong, you can marry whoever you want and I will never say another word. But if I'm right. Her voice had cracked then, genuine emotion breaking through. If I'm right, my son, I will have saved you from a terrible mistake. There had been a long pause. Then, quietly, 2 p.m. I'll be there. But Chioma had returned early. The meeting had been cancelled at the last minute, and she had come back to her apartment angry and suspicious. That wasn't in the plan. Mama Adeyemi had been photographing the stolen jewelry when she had the key in the lock. She barely had time to shove the boxes back and grab her mop before Chioma stormed in. The champagne glass breaking had been an accident. But maybe it was fate. Maybe this was exactly how it needed to happen, raw and explosive and real. Now, standing tall for the first time in 3 months, Mama Adeyemi watched Chioma's face cycle through shock, fear, and then something dangerous. Calculation. Mrs. Adeyemi, Chioma said, her voice suddenly smooth, her expression shifting to concern. I don't understand. Why are you dressed like this? Are you okay? Does Kwame know you're here? It was a good attempt at manipulation. Mama Adeyemi almost admired it. Flip the script. Make the accuser seem unstable. Make this about a concerned daughter-in-law worried about her future mother-in-law's mental health. Drop the act, Chioma. I've been cleaning your apartment for 4 weeks. I've seen everything. I've heard everything. I know about the fraud ring. I know about the other men. I know you were planning to forge Kwame's signature on property transfers after the wedding. I know you've already picked out the retirement home you plan to dump me in. Chioma's mask slipped. Her eyes turned cold and hard. You can't prove any of that. Can't I? Mama Adeyemi gestured to the jewelry boxes. Those pieces were given to Kwame by me personally. Family heirlooms. He let you borrow them. But you weren't planning to give them back, were you? I found the appraiser's contact information. You were going to sell them and claim they were lost. That's not theft. They were gifts to me. Gift. Show me the paperwork. Show me any documentation that Kwame transferred ownership. You can't, because he didn't. This is theft, plain and simple. Chioma's face twisted with rage. The beautiful mask cracked completely. You think you're so smart, you old witch. You think your precious son is going to believe you over me. I've been perfect for him. Perfect. Everyone loves us together. His business partners, his friends, the media. Everyone thinks we're the ideal couple. Everyone except the person who matters most. The person who raised him. The person who knows what real love looks like. You're just a bitter old woman who can't stand to see her son happy. I can't stand to see my son destroyed by a gold digger and a thief. Chioma lunged forward, and for a moment, Mama Adeyemi thought she might actually attack her. But then a voice from the bedroom doorway stopped everyone cold. Chioma. Kwame stood there, his face a mask of devastation. Behind him, Commissioner Akinwande in full uniform, his expression grave. They had heard everything. Every word. Every confession. Chioma's face went white. Kwame, baby, I can explain. Explain what? Kwame's voice was barely a whisper, thick with pain. Explain how you called my mother a witch. Explain the stolen jewelry. Explain the fraud ring. What exactly are you going to explain? She rushed toward him, tears suddenly streaming down her face. Real or fake, Mama Adeyemi couldn't tell anymore. Baby, please, your mother has been pretending to be a cleaner. She's been spying on me. She's been invading my privacy. This is entrapment. Entrapment requires law enforcement inducing someone to commit a crime they wouldn't otherwise commit, Commissioner Akinwon said calmly. What we have here is simply observation. Mrs. Adeyemi worked as a legitimate employee. She saw evidence of theft and reported it. Everything was done legally. You set me up. Chioma screamed at Mama Adeyemi. You manipulative. I protected my son, Mama Adeyemi said quietly. That's what mothers do. Kwame still hadn't moved. He was staring at Chioma like he'd never seen her before, which in a way, he hadn't. Everything he thought he knew was a carefully constructed lie. Was any of it real? He finally asked. Anything at all? For just a moment, something flickered across Chioma's face. Something that might have been genuine emotion. But then it was gone, replaced by cold fury. You were a mark, she spat. A meal ticket. And you were so easy. So desperate to believe someone could love you for you and not your money. Pathetic. The slap would have been instant if Mama Adeyemi had been younger. Instead, she simply stepped forward, positioning herself between Chioma and her son. Commissioner, I believe you have enough evidence to proceed. What followed was procedure. Rights being read. Handcuffs clicking into place. Chioma's transition from rage to pleading to threats to tears. The arrival of additional officers. The careful documentation of evidence. The jewelry being photographed and catalogued. Through it all, Kwame sat on the couch, silent and still, watching his entire vision of the future crumble into dust. Let me ask you, friends watching this story unfold, what would you have done in Mama Adeyemi's position? Would you have confronted the situation head-on, or would you have used this same careful strategy? Have you ever had to protect someone you love from a person who turned out to be completely different than they seemed? Share your stories in the comments below. I really want to hear about your experiences. And please, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. These African folktales carry wisdom we all need, and your support helps us share more stories like this one. The silence in the car ride home was heavier than any words could have been. Mama Adeyemi had removed all traces of her disguise. She sat beside her son in the back of their driver's car, watching his profile as he stared out the window at Lagos traffic rushing by. The setting sun painted everything in shades of orange and gold, but there was no warmth in the light. She wanted to reach for his hand. She wanted to tell him it would be okay. But she knew Kwame well enough to understand he needed space to process what had happened. The betrayal. The humiliation. The fact that his mother had been right. When they finally arrived at the estate, Kwame went directly to his study without a word. The heavy door closed with a soft click that somehow felt like thunder. Mama Adeyemi stood in the hallway, still wearing her simple cleaning clothes under her elegant coat, feeling the weight of every one of her 60 years. Should I prepare dinner, Ma? Asked Patience, their house manager of 20 years. Just something light. I don't think either of us has much appetite tonight. Patience nodded, then hesitated. Ma, forgive me for asking, but is everything alright? With Master Kwame. How did you explain that your son's heart had just been broken? That his trust in people had been shattered? That the woman he'd been planning to marry had been arrested for fraud and theft? We'll be fine, Mama Adeyemi said softly. We always are. But as she climbed the stairs to her own room, she wondered if that was true this time. Kwame had dated before, had experienced breakups, but nothing like this. Never such a complete betrayal. Never such public humiliation, because by now, news would be spreading through Lagos society like wildfire. The billionaire's son and the criminal girlfriend. The scandal. The drama. She showered, washing away the last remnant of Momangozi. The grey hair dye she'd carefully applied. The makeup that had aged her face. The padding that had changed her shape. As the water ran clear, she felt both relief and a strange sadness. For 3 months, she had been invisible. She had seen the world as the cleaners, the drivers, the security guards saw it. She had experienced the casual cruelty of those who thought themselves superior. The dismissive tones. The thoughtless demands. The complete lack of basic respect. But she had also seen moments of unexpected kindness. The young secretary who had always greeted her by name. The wealthy widow who had insisted on hearing stories about her fictional grandchildren. The businessman who had accidentally bumped into her and apologized profusely, treating her like a person who mattered. Those experiences had changed something in her. She looked at her staff differently now. She saw them as individuals with full, complex lives, not just as people who perform services. She understood their dignity in a way she never had before. A soft knock on her bedroom door interrupted her thoughts. "Mama." Kwame stood in the doorway, and for a moment, she saw him as a little boy again. 7 years old, coming to her after a nightmare, needing comfort only she could provide. "Come in, my son." He entered slowly and sat on the edge of her bed, the same spot where they had talked through every major decision of his life. Which university to attend? Whether to take over the family business or start his own. How to handle the pressure of immense wealth. Everything except how to choose a wife, because until now, he had insisted he could manage that on his own. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "No." "Yes. I do." He looked at her finally, his eyes red-rimmed but dry. "You tried to warn me. Not just about Chioma, but about so many others. And I always dismissed your concerns. I thought you were being overprotective. Controlling. Unable to accept that I was grown. You are grown, Kwame. This wasn't about control. I know that now." He rubbed his face with both hands. "Mama, how did you know? What made you suspicious enough to become a cleaner? To go undercover in her life?" So Mama Adeyemi told him. She told him about overhearing Zora on the phone. About the pattern she'd noticed of women who changed once they thought they had him secured. About her growing fear that he would marry someone who would make him miserable, someone who would isolate him from his family, someone who saw him as a prize rather than a person. "I didn't want to interfere," she said. "But I couldn't stand by and watch you commit your life to someone without knowing who they truly were. People show their real character when they think no one important is watching. That's why I became Mama Ngozi." "Did you always plan to work in Chioma's apartment?" "No. Initially, I just wanted to understand the world differently. To see how people treated those they considered beneath them. But when you told me you were serious about Chioma, I requested the assignment." She paused. "I had to know, Kwame. I had to be sure. And if she had been kind, if she had treated Mama Ngozi well, then I would have welcomed her into our family with open arms. But she wasn't kind. She was cruel and calculating and dangerous. And you deserve to know that before you made a life-changing mistake." Kwame was quiet for a long moment. Then, she said I was pathetic. That I was desperate to believe someone could love me for myself. The pain in his voice nearly broke her heart. "My son. Maybe she was right. Maybe I am pathetic. Here I am, 32 years old, wealthy, educated, supposedly intelligent, and I can't tell the difference between real love and a performance." Mama Adeyemi moved to sit beside him, taking his hand in both of hers. "Listen to me carefully. You are not pathetic. You are trusting. You are hopeful. You see the best in people. These are beautiful qualities, Kwame. Don't let one wicked woman make you ashamed of your capacity to love." "How do I trust anyone now? How do I know who's real?" "You watch how they treat people who can do nothing for them. You notice whether their kindness is consistent or selective. You pay attention to who they are when they think no one important is watching. She squeezed his hand. And sometimes, my son, you let your mother work as a cleaner for a few weeks. He surprised her by laughing, a short, bitter sound, but still, it was something. I can't believe you did that. You, one of the wealthiest women in Nigeria, scrubbing toilets. It was educational. I recommend it. Mama. I'm serious. I learned more about human nature in 3 months as a cleaner than in 30 years of wealth. Maybe everyone should do it. Switch positions. Walk in different shoes. Kwame shook his head, but there was a small smile now. You're extraordinary, you know that. I'm a mother. We do what's necessary. They sat together in comfortable silence as darkness fell outside the windows. Eventually, Patience brought up a tray with soup and bread, which they picked at together. What happens now? Kwame finally asked. With Chioma, I mean. The legal case. Commissioner Akinwand is handling it personally. With the evidence we gathered, the stolen jewelry, the bank records, she'll face serious charges. And he's investigating her associates, the others involved in the fraud ring. Good. There was steel in his voice now. She shouldn't be able to do this to anyone else. No. She shouldn't. Another pause, then, will I ever find someone real, Mama? Someone who actually wants me and not what I can give them? This was the question she'd been dreading. Because the honest answer was complicated. Wealth changed everything. It created barriers and distortions. It made genuine connection incredibly difficult. She knew this from her own experience, from the loneliness that came with success, from watching friends disappear when she no longer needed their help. Yes, she said finally. But you have to change how you look. What do you mean? You meet women at charity galas and business functions. You date within your social circle. Everyone you encounter already knows who you are and what you're worth. The information shapes every interaction before it even begins. So what do I do? Hide my identity. Pretend to be poor. Not pretend. Just live more quietly sometimes. Volunteer somewhere you're not known. Take a class. Join a community project. Put yourself in situations where you're just Kwame, not Kwame Adeyemi the billionaire's son. Did you do that? Before you met Papa? Mama Adeyemi smiled at the memory. Your father and I met at a bus stop. I was waiting for the bus to the market. He was there because his car had broken down. We started talking about the weather, then about everything. We talked for 2 hours, missing 3 buses. He had no idea I owned the second largest textile business in Lagos. I had no idea he was an architect designing the new city center. We were just 2 people, talking. That seems impossible now. It seems impossible because you're looking in impossible places. You're surrounded by people who know your worth before they know your name. Change your surroundings, and you change your possibilities. Kwame considered this. The charity foundation. I spend most of my time in the office, managing grants and applications. What if I actually went out into the communities we serve? What if I worked directly with the programs? Now you're thinking like your father. He always said the view from the ground is clearer than the view from the tower. Tell me more about him. About how you knew he was different. So she did. She told stories late into the night. About the man who had loved her for her fierce spirit and sharp mind. About the partner who had built a business empire alongside her, never trying to dim her light. About the father who had tickled baby Kwame until they both collapsed in giggles. About the husband who had died too young, too suddenly, leaving a hole that had never fully healed. He would have handled this better than I did, she admitted. He would have found a way that didn't require such dramatic subterfuge. I don't know, Mama. This seems exactly like something Papa would have done. Remember the story about how he investigated his own company anonymously? She laughed. He went undercover as a maintenance worker to find out why productivity was down in the factory. It turned out the floor manager was pocketing wages. Exactly. You two were perfectly matched. Both slightly crazy. Crazy enough to produce you. Lucky me. The heaviness that had filled the house earlier was lifting, just slightly. Enough to breathe. Enough to hope. But outside the estate walls, a different storm was brewing. By morning, every newspaper in Lagos would be running the story. Social media would be on fire with speculation and scandal. Kwame's phone would ring non-stop with reporters, friends, business associates, all wanting details, offering sympathy, seeking gossip. The real test wasn't the betrayal itself. It was what came after. How Kwame chose to move forward. Whether he would let this experience close his heart or teach his wisdom. Whether he would become bitter or simply more discerning. And Mama Adeyemi would be there for all of it, just as she had always been. Not controlling. Not interfering. Just present. Just watching. Just ready to become a cleaner again if that's what it took to protect her son. Because that's what mothers do. 3 weeks passed before Kwame left the estate for anything beyond essential business meetings. The media frenzy had been worse than Mama Adeyemi anticipated. Chioma's arrest had made national news, and somehow the detail about the disguised mother had leaked to the press. Headlines screamed variations of "Billionaire Mother Goes Undercover" and "Elite Cleaner Exposes Gold Digger." Think pieces debated whether Mama Adeyemi's actions were admirable or invasive. Social media exploded with opinions. #MomaKnowsBest trended for days, with people sharing their own stories of parental intuition saving them from bad relationships. But there was also #LetHimLive, arguing that adult children deserve to make their own mistakes without parental interference. The family's PR team worked overtime to control the narrative, but there was only so much they could do. Through it all, Kwame retreated into work. He spent 16-hour days at the office, restructuring the foundation, reviewing every project personally. He stopped attending social events. He ignored calls from friends. He became a ghost in his own life, present but not participating. Mama Adeyemi watched with growing concern. She hadn't saved him from one kind of destruction only to watch him choose another. Self-isolation could be just as damaging as a bad relationship. On a Wednesday morning, she made a decision. She appeared at his study door dressed casually, in simple trousers and a blouse, carrying a basket. "We are going out," she announced. Kwame looked up from his laptop, exhausted. "Mama, I have 3 conference calls today and cancel them. We are going out." "Where?" "You'll see. Get dressed. Something comfortable. We leave in 20 minutes. To her surprise, he didn't argue. Maybe he was too tired to fight. Maybe he sensed this wasn't optional. 20 minutes later, they were in her car, not the Mercedes with the company logo, but her personal vehicle, a modest Toyota she rarely used. "Where are we going?" he asked again as they drove through Lagos traffic. "To do some work." "What kind of work?" "The kind that matters." She drove to Mokoko, one of Lagos's waterfront slums. Wooden houses on stilts stretched over the lagoon, connected by precarious planks. Children played in boats instead of yards. The smell of fish and salt water mixed with poverty and resilience. "Mama, what are we doing here?" "The foundation supports 3 schools and 2 health clinics in this community. You've approved funding for years. Have you ever actually visited?" The answer on his face said everything. He'd written the checks, reviewed the reports, approved the projects. But he'd never set foot in the place. He'd never met the people his money was supposedly helping. "Come," she said simply. They spent the morning in Makoko. They visited a school where children learned in a building that flooded during heavy rains. They met teachers who taught multiple grades simultaneously because there weren't enough staff. They talked with mothers who worked as fish sellers, walking miles every day to support their families. They heard stories of resilience, hope, and determination that put Kwame's recent problems into sharp perspective. By lunchtime, they were sitting on plastic stools at a local food stall, eating rice and fish with their fingers because utensils weren't provided. The woman who ran the store, Mama Tond, had no idea who her customers were. She just saw two people who needed feeding. "You look sad, brother," she said to Kwame as she served him. "Woman trouble." Kwame nearly choked on his rice. Mama Adeyemi hid her smile. "You could say that," he managed. "Oh, women." Mama Tond shook her head wisely. "They can be trouble, especially if you choose with your eyes instead of your heart. My husband was not handsome. Not rich. But he was good. He respected me. He worked hard. He made me laugh. 23 years we had before the sickness took him. 23 good years." She patted Kwame's shoulder. "Choose character, brother. Beauty fades. Money comes and goes. But character, that stays." After she walked away, Kwame was quiet for a long moment. Then he said softly, "Everyone knows." "Not everyone. Mama Tond had no idea who you are. She just saw a young man who needed advice. But most people know. The scandal. The headlines. I can't go anywhere without people whispering, pointing, pitying me. Is that what you're hiding from? Other people's opinions?" "I'm not hiding. You are. You've locked yourself in the office, cut yourself off from the world. Chioma wanted to steal your money. Don't let her steal your life too." He set down his food, suddenly not hungry. "How do I move forward, Mama? How do I trust my own judgment again?" Before she could answer, a commotion erupted near the water's edge. Shouting. Screaming. People running. Mama Adeyemi and Kwame jumped up, following the crowd. A small boy had fallen from one of the plank bridges into the lagoon. He was struggling, going under, coming up gasping, going under again. His mother was screaming on the shore, held back by others. Several young men were already in the water, swimming toward him, but the current was strong and the boy was panicking, thrashing. Without thinking, Kwame kicked off his shoes and dove in. Mama Adeyemi's heart stopped. Her son was a strong swimmer, but this was dangerous. The lagoon was treacherous, full of debris and strange currents. She watched as he cut through the water with powerful strokes, reaching the boy just as he was going under again. Kwame grabbed him, holding his head above water, but the child was fighting him in his panic. "Relax. I've got you. Stop fighting." Kwame's voice carried across the water. Finally, the boy went limp, either from exhaustion or trust. Kwame started swimming back, one arm holding the child, the other stroking through the water. The other men helped, supporting them, guiding them to a ladder at the water's edge. Hans pulled the boy up first. He was coughing, crying, but alive. His mother grabbed him, sobbing, checking every inch of him. Then Kwame was hauled up, dripping wet, breathing hard. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. People clapped Kwame on the back, shook his hand, thanked him in Yoruba and English and Pidgin. Mama Tond appeared with towels. Someone offered hot tea. The boy's mother tried to kneel in gratitude, but Kwame stopped her, embarrassed. "Please, it's nothing. Anyone would have done the same." "Not everyone," said an older man with gray in his beard. "Many people see trouble and walk away. You jumped in without hesitation. That says who you are." Later, as they drove home, both still slightly damp despite the towels, Mama Adeyemi glanced at her son. There was something different in his face. Not the exhaustion that had lived there for weeks. Something else. Purpose, maybe. Connection. You didn't think, she said. When that boy fell, you didn't calculate the risk or worry about your reputation or consider whether it was worth it. You just acted. A child was drowning. Exactly. And in that moment, you knew exactly what to do. You trusted your instincts completely. The same instincts you're doubting now. He was quiet, processing. Your instincts aren't broken, Kwame. Your trust was betrayed by one person who was very good at deception. But look at what you did today. You saw people who needed help and you helped them. You saw a child in danger and you saved him. You didn't need anyone to tell you what was right. You knew. That's different. That was clear. Life or death. And choosing who to trust with your heart isn't. My son, you're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference. They drove in silence for a while, watching the city transform from poverty to wealth as they moved from one neighborhood to another. The contrast was stark, almost obscene. Within miles, the world changed completely. I want to do more, Kwame said suddenly. Not just approve funding. Not just sign checks. I want to be involved. Personally. The way Papa was. Mama Adeyemi smiled. Your father would be proud. Will you help me? Not manage me or control me, but guide me. The way you did with Chioma, but less dramatically. She laughed. I promise not to disguise myself as a cleaner again unless absolutely necessary. That's not much of a promise. It's the best you're getting. When they arrived home, there was a car in the driveway. An unfamiliar vehicle. Patience met them at the door with an odd expression. Ma, there's a visitor. A young woman. She says her name is Amora, and she's from Elite Cleaners. She insisted on waiting for you. She's been here for 2 hours. Mama Adeyemi and Kwame exchanged glances. Elite Cleaners, the agency she'd walked through. What could they want? They found the woman in the sitting room, perched nervously on the edge of a chair. She was young, maybe 25, with intelligent eyes and careful posture. When they entered, she stood quickly, respectfully. Mrs. Adeyemi, Mr. Adeyemi, thank you for seeing me. I apologize for coming unannounced, but I needed to speak with you. About what? Mama Adeyemi asked gently. About what you did. About Mom Ngozi. Tears suddenly filled the young woman's eyes. You don't know me, but I worked with you. I'm a real cleaner, not undercover. I've been doing this work for 3 years. And when the story broke, when everyone found out that you, one of the wealthiest women in Lagos, had spent 3 months working alongside us. She wiped her eyes. Everything changed. What do you mean? People started seeing us. Really seeing us. Clients who never bothered to learn our names suddenly asked about our families. People who treated us like furniture started treating us like humans. It's like you reminded everyone that we matter. That we have dignity. That we are not invisible. Mama Adeyemi felt something shift in her chest. She hadn't thought about that. She'd been so focused on protecting Kwame that she hadn't considered the broader impact of her actions. But that's not why I came, Amara continued. I came because I have information. About other situations like what happened with Miss Okafor. I've worked in many homes over the years. I've seen things. Heard things. And I've been documenting them, writing them down, because I kept thinking someone should know. Someone should do something. But who listens to a cleaner? She pulled out a worn notebook from her bag. There's a man, very wealthy, whose wife is being abused by him. Everyone thinks they're the perfect couple, but I've seen the bruises. There's a woman stealing from her elderly mother-in-law, slowly draining her accounts while the old woman thinks she's just forgetful. There's a business executive whose assistant is committing fraud in his name while he works on his 16-hour days. I have names, dates, evidence. Kwame leaned forward. You've been gathering evidence on your own. Someone has to. We see everything. We're in their homes when they think no one's watching. We hear the phone calls they don't bother to hide. We find the documents they leave lying around. But nobody believes a cleaner. Nobody listens to us. We'll listen, Mama Adeyemi said firmly. We'll do more than listen. We'll act. And suddenly, she saw it. The path forward. Not just for Kwame, but for all of them. An idea that would transform everything. What if we created something, she said, the plan forming even as she spoke. A program. An initiative. Where cleaners, drivers, security guards, all the invisible workers, could report abuse, fraud, danger. Where they would be believed. Where their information would be investigated and acted upon. Kwame's eyes lit up. Through the foundation. We could set up a hotline, a secure reporting system. We could work with law enforcement, social services, legal advocates. We could give voice to the people who see everything but are never heard. We could call it the Watchers Program, Amora said softly. Because that's what we are. We watch. We see. And maybe now, someone will finally listen. The three of them talked for hours, planning, strategizing, building something that had never existed before. A system that would empower the invisible workers to protect the vulnerable, to expose the corrupt, to shine light into dark corners. As evening fell and Amora finally left with promises to return the next day with her notebook and her network of fellow cleaners, Mama Adeyemi and Kwame stood on the terrace overlooking the city. I think Papa would love this, Kwame said. Taking something terrible and transforming it into something meaningful. Your father always said that pain could be either destructive or instructive. It's our choice which one we allow it to be. I'm glad you pretended to be a cleaner, Mama. Not just because you saved me from Chioma, but because of everything that came after. All of this. He gestured at the notebook Amora had left behind, full of cases that needed attention. We would never have thought of this otherwise. Sometimes we have to step outside our own lives to truly see what's needed in the world. Do you think I'll find her? The right person. I know you will. And when you do, I promise not to disguise myself to investigate her. Unless I really need to. Mama. I'm kidding. Mostly. They laughed together, and in that moment, standing on the terrace as Lego sprawled below them in all its chaos and beauty, something that had been broken began to heal. Not completely. Not instantly. But enough to move forward. Enough to hope. Inside the house, Patience was preparing dinner. In Makoko, a small boy who had nearly drowned was eating rice with his grateful family. In a small apartment across the city, Amora was calling other cleaners, telling them about the Watchers program, spreading hope through invisible networks. And in a prison cell, Chioma sat alone with the consequences of her choices, a cautionary tale about what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness and forget that everyone, even the people you dismiss as beneath notice, has power. The story wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. 6 months later, the Watchers program had expanded beyond anything they'd initially imagined. What started as a simple hotline had evolved into a full organization with legal support, counseling services, and partnerships with law enforcement agencies across Nigeria. Amora now worked full-time as the program coordinator, her cleaning days behind her but her connections to that world stronger than ever. The impact was immediate and profound. Domestic violence victims received help because their cleaners reported the truth. Elderly people being financially exploited were protected because drivers noticed suspicious patterns. Children in dangerous situations were rescued because security guards finally had a voice. The media coverage shifted too. What had started as scandal, the billionaire's mother going undercover, transformed into a story about social change. Mama Adeyemi gave interviews carefully, always redirecting attention to the workers themselves, to people like Amora who had been documenting injustice for years with no one to tell. Kwame threw himself into the work with renewed purpose. He spent 3 days a week in communities like Mokoko, not as a benefactor but as a participant. He learned names. He heard stories. He sat in people's homes and ate their food, and slowly, gradually, he remembered how to trust his instincts about character. One Thursday afternoon, he was at a community center in Ajigona, helping to teach financial literacy to local business owners. The room was crowded, hot, and chaotic. 50 people trying to learn about bookkeeping and budgeting and taxes, all shouting questions simultaneously. That's when he noticed her. She was sitting near the back, not saying much, but taking meticulous notes. While others argued and interrupted, she listened carefully, absorbing everything. She was beautiful, but in a different way than the women he usually noticed. No designer clothes or professional makeup. Just simple dress, natural hair, and eyes that missed nothing. During the break, she approached him with a question about tax deductions for small businesses. Her name was Zainab, and she owned a small tailoring shop in the neighborhood. She spoke with precision and intelligence, asking follow-up questions that showed she understood the concepts deeply. "You're really good at explaining this," she said. "Most of the financial advisors who come here talk down to us. You speak like we're intelligent adults who just need information." "That's because you are intelligent adults who just need information," Kwame replied. "Too many people confuse lack of formal education with lack of intelligence." She smiled. "Exactly. Thank you for understanding that." They talked for 20 minutes before the session resumed. Kwame learned that she supported 3 younger siblings with her tailoring business. That she taught herself bookkeeping from library books. That she was taking online courses at night to get a business degree. That she dreamed of opening a fashion school someday to teach other young women the trade. He didn't tell her who he was. In this community, he introduced himself simply as Kwame, a volunteer with the foundation. His wealth, his family name, his social status, none of it came up. He was just a man teaching a class. She was just a woman trying to build something meaningful. Over the following weeks, he found reasons to return to that community center. Sometimes for legitimate foundation business. Sometimes for less legitimate reasons. He told himself he was just doing his job, staying connected to the communities they served. But Mama Adeyemi saw through him immediately. "You're going to Ajigona 3 times a week now," she observed one evening. "That's a lot of sudden interest in one community center. The program there is important. We are seeing good results." "And does this good result have a name?" Kwame tried to keep a straight face and failed. "Her name is Zainab." "Tell me about her." So he did. He told his mother about the tailor who was building a business from nothing. About the woman who supported her entire family while pursuing her education. About someone who treated him like a regular person because she had no idea he was anything else. "Does she know who you are?" Mama Adeyemi asked. "No. And I'd like to keep it that way for a while. I want her to know me first. Just me. Not the money or the name or any of that. Your father did something similar with me. He didn't tell me about his architecture firm for weeks. He wanted to be sure I liked him for himself." "Did you?" "I fell in love with a man who made me laugh at a bus stop. The successful architect was just a bonus I discovered later." She paused. "But Kwame, you can't hide your identity forever. Eventually, she'll find out. How you handle that revelation will matter." "I know. But for now, can I just be a regular person for a while? As long as you're being honest in the ways that matter. Character. Intentions. Feelings. Those are the truths that count. The next day was Saturday, and Kwame had invited Zainab to visit the Mokoko school project. He picked her up in the modest Toyota, not wanting to arrive in a luxury vehicle that would raise questions. They spent the day with the children, helping to paint classrooms and organize books donated to the library. Zainab was natural with the kids, sitting on the floor to help them read, laughing at their jokes, braiding the girls' hair during breaks. She didn't perform compassion or stage charity. She just genuinely enjoyed being there. During lunch, sitting on the floor of a newly painted classroom eating jollof rice from plastic containers, she asked him about his life. "You never talk about yourself," she said. "I've told you everything about my family, my business, my dreams. But you're a mystery." Kwame carefully considered his words. "My family has money. Not just comfortable. Wealthy. And that changes how people see me. How they interact with me. I never know if someone likes me or the idea of what I can provide. So sometimes I just don't mention it. Is that what you think of me? That I'm interested in your money? No. That's why I'm telling you now. Because I don't think that about you." She was quiet for a moment, processing. "How wealthy are we talking?" "Very. Like Lagos wealthy." "Yes." "Should I know your last name?" "Probably." Another pause. "Then, are you going to tell me? Do you want to know?" She looked at him carefully, studying his face. "I like the man who helps teach financial literacy on Thursday afternoons. The one who painted classrooms today and got more paint on himself than on the walls. The one who listens when people talk and doesn't pretend to have all the answers. That's the person I want to know. If he happens to have money, that's just a detail." Something in Kwame's chest loosened. "Adeyemi. My name is Kwame Adeyemi." Recognition flickered across her face. "The foundation. This foundation. Your foundation." "My family's foundation, yes. And the scandal from a few months ago. The mother who pretended to be a cleaner. That was my mother." "Yes." Zainab set down her rice, clearly overwhelmed. "You're that Kwame Adeyemi. The one whose girlfriend was arrested for fraud." "Ex-girlfriend." "Very ex. This is a lot of information." "I know. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I just wanted you to know me first. Before the money complicated everything." She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. Kwame waited, his heart pounding. This was the moment. Either she could see past the wealth to the person, or she couldn't. Either his identity would overshadow everything else, or it wouldn't. Finally, she looked up. "I need to think. Can you give me some time to process this?" "Of course. Take all the time you need. Thank you for telling me. For being honest." They finished the day working on the classrooms, but something had shifted. The easy conversation was gone, replaced by awkward silences and careful distance. When Kwame drove her home, she thanked him politely and disappeared into her building without looking back. That evening, Mama Adeyemi found him sitting in the garden, staring at nothing. "It didn't go well," she observed. "I told her who I was." She asked for time to think. "That's reasonable. You essentially revealed that you've been hiding a significant truth from her. She needs to process that. What if she can't get past it? What if knowing I'm wealthy changes everything? Then she's not the right person. But give her a chance, Kwame. Real people need time to adjust to information like this." Days passed. Then a week. Kwame threw himself into work, trying not to check his phone every 5 minutes, trying not to hope. The waiting was agony, but he respected her need for space. Then, on Thursday afternoon, he walked into the community center for the financial literacy session, and she was there. sitting in her usual spot near the back, taking her meticulous notes. After class, she approached him. "Can we talk?" They walked to a nearby park, sitting on a bench overlooking a small pond where children sailed toy boats. "I did research," Zainab said. "About you, your family, the scandal with Chioma. I read everything I could find. I talked to people who know you, people in this community who've worked with the foundation. And I have questions. Ask me anything. Why do you do this? The teaching, the community work. You could just write checks and hire people to do the actual work. Why are you here personally? Friends, this is important. Before we continue with Kwame's answer, I want to ask you something. Take a moment right now and drop a comment telling me where you're watching this story from. Are you in Lagos, London, New York, somewhere else entirely? I love knowing where our audience is from, and it helps me understand what kind of stories resonate with you. And while you're commenting, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with your friends and family. These African folktales carry wisdom that crosses all borders, and your support helps us keep sharing them. Now, let's get back to Kwame and Zainab. Kwame took a deep breath, knowing that his answer to Zainab's question would determine everything. I do this because I saw what wealth without purpose looks like. I saw how isolation and privilege can corrupt judgment. My mother pretended to be a cleaner to save me from a terrible mistake, but she also showed me something else. She showed me that real life, real connection, real human dignity exists in places I'd never thought to look. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Zainab listened carefully, her expression unreadable. I'm here, Kwame continued, because being in these communities, teaching these classes, working alongside people like you, it makes me a better person. It reminds me what matters. And honestly, it's where I feel most myself. Not at charity galas or board meetings or anywhere else I'm supposed to be. Here. With people who see me as just Kwame. But you're not just Kwame. You're Kwame Adeyemi. That's not something you can separate from who you are. I know. I'm not trying to hide from it anymore. I just wanted to meet someone who knew my character before they knew my net worth. Is that so wrong? No, she said softly. It's not wrong. It's kind of beautiful. And sad. That you have to hide pieces of yourself to find genuine connection. So where does this leave us? Zainab turned to face him fully. I've been scared this whole week. Not of your money, exactly, but of what it represents. Different words. Different expectations. I'm a tailor from Ajigana who's working 3 jobs to support my siblings. You're a billionaire's son who could buy my entire neighborhood without thinking about it. How does that work? I don't know, Kwame admitted. But I'd like to find out. If you're willing. I talked to my mother about this. About you. And you know what she said? She said that money reveals character, it doesn't create it. She said to watch how you treat people who can't do anything for you, because that's who you really are. And Kwame, the way you are in these communities, with these kids, with everyone who doesn't know your name, that tells me who you are. Does that mean? It means I want to try. Carefully. Slowly. With a lot of honest conversation about the complications. But yes, I want to try. The relief that flooded through Kwame was almost overwhelming. Thank you. I promise I'll be completely honest from now on. No more hiding things. Good. Because I have conditions. Conditions. Yes. First, I won't be your charity project or your redemption story. I'm building my own life, my own business. I need you to respect that. Absolutely. Second, I want to meet your mother. The woman who pretended to be a cleaner. I need to know if I can hold my own in your family. Kwame laughed. She's going to love you. And third, if this gets serious, if we become something real, I want to be involved in the foundation's work. Not as decoration, not as the billionaire's girlfriend, but as someone with actual skills and insights to contribute. I know these communities. I live this life. That has value. That has incredible value. Are you kidding? You're exactly the kind of perspective the foundation needs. They talked until the sun set, discussing logistics and fears and hopes. How they would handle the inevitable media attention. How they would navigate the gap between their worlds. How they would protect what they were building from external pressures. 2 weeks later, Zainab came to dinner at the estate. Mama Adeyemi had insisted on keeping it casual, just family, no staff hovering or formal place settings. Just 3 people sharing a meal. Zainab arrived nervous but determined, wearing a beautiful dress she'd sewn herself. Mama Adeyemi greeted her warmly at the door. So you're the woman who has my son driving to Ajigona 3 times a week? Yes, Ma. I'm sorry if I've been distracting him from his work. Distracting him? Child, you've given him purpose. He's been more alive these past months than he's been in years. I should be thanking you. Over dinner, they talked about everything. Zainab's business dreams. The Watchers program. Mama Adeyemi's experience as Momangozi. The complications of wealth and relationships. You know, Mama Adeyemi said during dessert, I investigated Chioma by becoming a cleaner. But I won't be doing that with you. Why not? Zainab asked, surprising them both. Because you don't think I need investigating. No, because you already know who I am. You've seen my life, my community, my work. You've watched me interact with people when I didn't know Kwame's real identity. You've already done your investigation. You just did it honestly instead of in disguise. Mama Adeyemi stared at her for a moment, then laughed, delighted. You're absolutely right. I've been watching you for weeks through Kwame's eyes. Through the reports from the community center. I know you support your family, build your business, pursue your education, and treat people with respect. I know your character. She reached across the table and squeezed Zainab's hand. And I approve. Thank you, Ma. But I have one question. Why my son? You could date anyone in your community, someone whose life matches yours more closely. Why take on the complications that come with Kwame? Zainab thought carefully before answering. Because he sees me. Not as a project or a poor girl to be saved, but as a person with intelligence and capability. He asks my opinion. He listens to my ideas. He respects my work. And honestly, Ma, those qualities are rare. Rich or poor, it doesn't matter. A man who truly sees and values women, that's precious anywhere. The courtship that followed was unlike anything Kwame had experienced before. Zainab refused expensive gifts, insisting she wasn't interested in his money. Instead, they went to local restaurants, took walks in public parks, attended community events. She introduced him to her world, her family, her friends. And slowly, carefully, she allowed him to introduce her to his. The media eventually found out, of course. Billionaire's son dating local tailor made headlines. But this time, Kwame handled it differently. He gave one interview, with Zainab by his side, where they controlled their narrative. They talked about meeting through community work, about shared values and genuine connection. They addressed the wealth gap directly, acknowledging the challenges but emphasizing their commitment to building something real. People will say I'm with him for money, Zainab told the interviewer calmly. And there's nothing I can do to convince those people otherwise. But I know my truth. I know I was perfectly fine before I met Kwame, and I'll be perfectly fine if things don't work out. I'm with him because of who he is, not what he has. 6 months later, Zainab's tailoring business expanded with help from a foundation loan, the same loans available to any qualified applicant. She hired 3 employees and started offering training programs. Not because Kwame pulled strings, but because she wrote an excellent application and had a solid business plan. A year later, Kwame proposed. Not in a restaurant or on a beach or anywhere public. He proposed in the community center where they'd met, during a break in a financial literacy session, surrounded by the people who had watched their relationship grow. "I don't have the ring with me," he admitted. "I wanted to ask you first, just you, in the place where I started to understand what real love could look like. Zainab, will you marry me?" She smiled through tears. "Ask me again with the ring, and we'll see." "Is that a yes?" "It's a maybe. An enthusiastic maybe." The actual proposal, with the ring, happened a week later during a family dinner. Zainab's siblings were there, loud and laughing. Mama Adeyemi was there, watching with approval. Even Patience and the house staff were invited, because by now, they understood that this family operated differently. When Zainab said yes, the celebration was joyful and loud and completely lacking in pretense. This wasn't a merger of fortunes or a social coup. It was just 2 people who had found each other in unexpected places, choosing to build a life together. The wedding took place 6 months later, a blend of both worlds. A traditional ceremony in Zainab's community, followed by a reception at the estate. Guests ranged from street traders to government officials, from cleaners to CEOs. Amara was there, now running a national network of the Watchers program. The boy Kwame had saved from the lagoon was there, performing a special dance with his youth group. During her speech, Mama Adeyemi told the story of pretending to be a cleaner. The guests had heard versions of it before, but this time she emphasized something different. "I thought I was going undercover to protect my son from the wrong woman," she said. "But what I actually did was learn to see the world differently. I learned that dignity has nothing to do with wealth. That character reveals itself in how we treat those who can do nothing for us. That wisdom exists everywhere if we are humble enough to listen. I saved my son from one bad marriage, yes. But more importantly, I learned lessons that led him to this good one." She raised her glass. "To Zainab, who sees my son for who he is. And to Kwame, who finally learned to trust his own judgment about what matters. And to all of us, the watchers and the workers, the wealthy and the working, learning to see each other clearly." As the celebration continued into the night, Kwame and Zainab slipped away to a quiet corner of the garden. The music and laughter drifted through the air, but here they had a moment of peace. "Are you happy?" Kwame asked. Terrified and ecstatic and overwhelmed, Zainab admitted. "But yes. Happy. Me too. And grateful. For my mother's crazy plan. For the Watchers program bringing us together. For everything that led to this moment. Even Chioma. Even Chioma. Because that betrayal taught me what real trust looks like. It showed me the difference between performance and authenticity. Without that painful lesson, I might not have recognized the real thing when it appeared." Zainab leaned against him, comfortable and confident. "Your mother did good, you know. Even if her methods were unconventional. That's one way to describe pretending to be a cleaner. It worked though. She saw the truth. And now here we are. Here we are." From the house, they could hear Mama Adeyemi's laugh, bright and joyful. She was dancing with Zainab's younger sister, surrounded by guests from every background, every economic level, all celebrating together. The story that had started with broken glass and betrayal had transformed into something beautiful. Not perfect, nothing involving humans ever is. But real. Honest. Built on character and respect rather than wealth and performance. And isn't that what all the best folktales teach us? That true value has nothing to do with money or status. That wisdom comes from unexpected places. That sometimes you have to become invisible to truly see. That character reveals itself in how we treat the people society tells us don't matter. Mama Adeyemi's pretense as a cleaner had been about more than catching a gold digger. It had been about stripping away the illusions that wealth creates, seeing people as they truly are, and remembering that we are all human underneath our different circumstances. As the celebration continued, as families from different worlds mingled and laughed and danced together, one thing became clear: the best way to find genuine connection is to first strip away everything that obscures truth. Whether that means pretending to be someone else or simply being brave enough to be completely yourself. And sometimes, the most valuable lessons come from the people we barely notice. The cleaners who see everything. The workers who hear every secret. The invisible people who hold invisible power, just waiting for someone to finally listen. This is why our elders tell these stories, passing wisdom from generation to generation. Not to entertain, though they do, but to teach. To remind us that character matters more than wealth. That love requires honesty. That the best way to protect the people we love is to help them see truth clearly, even when that truth is uncomfortable. So if you've watched this story all the way to the end, if you've traveled with Mama Adeyemi from her disguise to her triumph, take this lesson with you: look beyond surfaces. Value character over credentials. Treat everyone with dignity, because you never know who's watching. Who's listening? Who's learning from how you behave when you think no one important can see? And remember, the best stories don't end with happily ever after. They end with lessons learned, wisdom gained, and lives changed for the better. That's the true magic of African folktales. They don't just entertain. They transform. The end.